Democracy and freedom of expression is about tolerating the views that you don't like from someone you might not like. This is the burning issue on the happy world of 5FM Radio, bringing you hot, smoldering topics on a weekly basis. Your participation is important.
We're glad to be back on a Tuesday morning. It's a Tuesday edition of the burning issue here on the happy world of 5FM Radio. We are thankful that you could find time to tune in to 89.9 in Lusaka, 94.1 in Chipata. We are also live on our Facebook page, that's 5FM Radio Zambia. And we are also live on Smart Eagles as well. And so also on the Facebook page for Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba. He is actually our guest this morning, and we are glad to host him. So later on, I will definitely give you, our listeners, an opportunity to call in and interact with our guest. Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, good morning. Welcome to the program. It's been a long time.
Yes, Zach, good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
I last hosted you in 2015. Would you believe that? In 2015.
Oh my God. And I love this station, you know, it's adult contemporary, its music is beautiful, and it has a mature audience. I listen to you on, you know, various times when you've hosted guests. And I remember the last good one that was an intellectual spa was that when you hosted Akashamba Twambiku Stalewa because I was in Ethiopia.
Indeed.
So that was very good, yeah.
Indeed. And so how have you been?
Very well. Glad to be home.
Yeah.
Came last month and trying to settle, trying to participate, trying to be relevant.
Indeed. And of course, how would you then describe your civil service journey? Because I mean, it started way back, I know. But generally, now that you are seated here, more like you know, a retired civil servant, it will be important to just know how it's been.
Well, I've been in the civil service the last 18, 19 years, almost 20 years actually.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I served very well. I started as administrator to the office of the second president, serving the former president, Dr. Frederick Chiluba, in retirement. He also gave me the privilege to appointed me as official spokesperson for him on all matters because of probably my background as a journalist, a job I did for 10 years as a spokesperson. There was a transition when I was appointed as permanent secretary by the late President Michael Sata, again may his soul rest in eternal peace. I was appointed as permanent secretary Northern Province, permanent secretary Eastern Province, permanent secretary Western Province, permanent secretary Ministry of Information and Broadcasting Services, and then cabinet office. And then, you know, people talk about being retired in national interest. I was very young and I was retired in national interest by President Michael Sata. But it didn't take long. I had a rare opportunity just a year later when President Edgar Lungu appointed me as Zambia's High Commissioner to South Africa. And Zambia's later, he promoted me as Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia, where I was permanent representative to the African Union, permanent representative to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. How has been my journey? Extremely fruitful. I've used my office to save Zambia, to save our people, to advance the cause of development. When I was in Northern Province, Zach, one of the issue I give an example is we found a company called Northern Coffee. It had closed for 5 years, and it's, you know, it would export coffee, and coffee from Kasama is one of the best in the world. And I didn't understand why that company closed. So I inquired as soon as I arrived. You know, when you read the books, handover notes, and you read the state of the province, I embarked on a journey to revive that company. And within a period of 3 to 6 months, we had obtained an investor. Northern Coffee now is the largest a private employer in Northern Province with over 2,000 employees, and it has over 3,600 outgrower scheme farmers who support the work of coffee farming. So there are things like that I did. When I was in Western Province, I pushed the agenda. I'd found a very ambitious development agenda there to do with the Mongu-Kalabo Road. It was stalling for various reasons. We reactivated to ensure that it was completed. There were many roads under construction, such as Mongu Senanga, Mongu Sesheke, the bridge at Sioma, and we brought the township roads for Mongu Township. And Western Province is known for cashew nuts. Cashew nuts sell up to $10,000 a ton, many times far higher than what you sell copper. And I didn't understand why we're not utilizing that. So we got in touch with the Cashew Association. We got the money to begin to regroup, begin to ensure that cashew, the industry was revived. And then we wrote a project proposal of $50 million with Ministry of Finance, together with ourselves in Western Province. And you've seen that there's been an actual realization where the Africa Development Bank have since released the $50 million, and cashew project is formally underway. A lot of farmers are involved, and we hope that it will begin to yield fruits. And we need to industrialize the value addition sector, because that's where that industry fails. And we learned, when I was there, we had to bring experts from Mozambique to advise us on varieties that we could get, to advise us on how they were successful, because they export to Brazil. So we wanted to learn. And the 3 experts that came from Mozambique were trained in Zambia, because we had pioneered the cashew industry. And they said, now we are coming back to you as experts. You see the folly of our development in this country, where we stop, where we begin and do not continue, and where when the new government comes, it's regarded as a disruption, and the new government wants to abandon projects of the past and start their own. And the case of cashew nuts and the Mozambican experts we brought tell us that story, where people we trained and taught were the ones coming 20 years later to teach us. So my journey was good. When I came to Ministry of Information and Broadcasting Services, there we did far-reaching changes, even if I was there just for a period of 2.5 months. But the things we did, we introduced Zanis News. We ensured that the public media had very active social media pages, because there were complaints that social media is rising. There was reference, that time they had banned Zambia Reports and Zambian Watchdog. I said, this is not the way to go. The way to go is for public media to be extremely responsive. And I think we encourage them to employ online editors and recruit people to run their online papers. Besides, they are expected, ZNBC Times, Daily Mail are expected to be the most credible on the market, because their news is verified, Zach. Their information is official in many ways. So for me, that was my approach: be proactive, respond to this. Remember, we gave numerous licenses. I'd found on the table many licenses pending. And I think there were only 34 licenses that had, 34. I think we attended to about 34 licenses, Zach. When I was on your sister station yesterday on Prime TV, I was harangued on my page on social media, where people were telling me that PF closed Prime TV. Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, why are you appearing on a station that you closed? Yeah, but for me, I tell my story. When I was PS, I expanded the realm of the media, gave licenses, nationwide licenses. In fact, it's one of the reasons that President Michael Sata gave when he was dismissing me, that why are you giving nationwide licenses to these radio stations? Don't you know that they're influenced by the opposition, you know? And even in the particular case of Prime TV, you know, there were recommendations that that purposefully crafted some regulation that one entity should not own radio and TV. I think there was an attempt to block Fred Membe and the Post, who were expanded from newspaper, radio, and TV, and he had those various applications. So being from the media, so Prime TV were affected by consequence, because unit Joy FM and Prime TV is owned by a couple. So I said, no, I need to consult the Attorney General on this matter, because I don't think it's supported by the law. Right. And the Attorney General advised that there was nothing wrong. And in the case of Prime TV, the two stations were owned by separate people, because the law deals with you differently. You could be husband and wife, but the law looks at you in your individual capacity, not in your marriage capacity. So I could have used that opportunity to close 5FM, Prime TV. Right. Did I? Right. I didn't. You know, in fact, after the advice from the Attorney General, it strengthened the position of Prime TV. Suffice to say, what happened later, you know, wasn't done under my hand.
It's unfortunate also that, you know, while you were the permanent secretary, information, it's unfortunate that the late President Sata was against the fact that you were giving nationwide coverage to private stations for that matter. Yet this was his strongest campaign song each time he was on radio, and he promised all of us that he was going to give us nationwide coverage.
And it is in the PF manifesto. And for me, understanding the digital...
Is it a political thing that politicians will promise and backtrack on them, on the promises? It looks like it's now becoming a norm.
Yeah, so for me, I understood the digital nature of the media.
Right.
Even if you have a local license to broadcast in Lusaka, if you're on Facebook, you are worldwide. You are broadcasting worldwide. So sometimes it's just failure by both regulators and our politicians who come from the old school, who do not understand that. They think that they've restricted you with a license in Lusaka by an FM broadcast. But here we are broadcasting to the world. So the regulation is archaic, it's irrelevant, and it's redundant, because technology has overtaken such regulations. So I was proactive in nature. I said, even these licenses, what we are doing is just formalizing what occurs. Because these radio and TV stations have streaming services. They're already streaming on social media platforms. So even if you say, no, your local area is just, your city TV, your local area is Lusaka. Your 5FM, your local area is just Lusaka. It's just to fool ourselves. I was trying to update. In the absence of reform to the laws, I was trying to update it in a practical way, using licenses. Of course, I ended up with good rapport. There's something I can disclose. After the president dismissed me, you know, some of his officials began to harass me, accusing me this and that, writing dirty stuff about me. I went to see the president. I was fired somewhere in November. I went to see the president in February. And there's something he did. He directed that I be paid my benefits immediately, because some of his boys were fiddling with that, trying to punish Emmanuel Mwamba, because of political issues and, you know, the petty fights that go on.
That's right.
Yeah. So the president directed that I be paid my benefits immediately. He directed that the car, the person to order a Land Cruiser Prado, that, you know, was my entitlement, that ownership should change immediately. And a day or so later, I had bought my car and I was paid my benefits as permanent secretary after serving. And He later appointed me as ambassador. He said to 2 places where he was the ministry was going to determine. He said he had appointed me as ambassador either to Egypt or South Korea. I don't know what happened to that appointment, but the president even called my dear brother George Kanyamula Zulu, who was PS, and in February was in Chipata. They were preparing, Abangonia, Filamwangala, Nanchwala ceremony, Mkwala. So George Zulu Mayumbuya was in Eastern Province preparing that. When the president, because I was in his office, called him, I've appointed Emmanuel Mwamba as ambassador to Egypt or to South Korea. So I have disclosed that matter, Zach, for people that keep on rubbing it in me. No, but Sata fired you. Well, he subsequently gave me a job. The job wasn't realized because, the president later died. But when God gives you a job, it doesn't matter who is there. And I still served as ambassador. Later on. A process that had been started by President Michael Sata.
Interesting civil service journey, but to you, on the other side, you have a political life, which I would best describe that you must have learnt it from the best in the self-proclaimed, may he so rest in peace, the political dribbler.
Well,
and maybe I would also say that your political education from President Chiluba, I think you must have kept it within you, and it exploded in 2015, because then we saw how aggressive you were to ensure that Edgar Lungu became president.
When I went to Dr. Chiluba as a young man to serve him as administrator and later as official spokesperson, first it was a very difficult journey. Dr. Chiluba had just lost I'd just become a former president. Yes. And, they had piled up these corruption allegations against him. Right. He was isolated, friends, businessmen, political foes, left, opportunistic people behave in Lusaka. He was alone when I saved him. I was under pressure from many people. Emmanuel, what are you doing there? Why are you taking this fight as your personal fight? Why are you injuring yourself and your family? Stay away. This President Manawasa and this fight will injure you. And for many reasons I was injured. I was scandalized. They attempted even, there were attempts even on my life. But that's another story. But what I didn't know were the subsequent issues that came later. Then I appreciated having sat with Dr. Chiluba every day for 10 years. I appreciated the narratives and the talk and the speeches and just the mentoring he had been giving me for 10 years. And only when you step out and you're given another assignment do you realize the immense value and experience that you have. So truly indeed, it was a rare privilege that I served Dr. Chiluba in the circumstances that he was in, and I did my job very well. But if there was the biggest training I've ever gotten from any university, it's from that man, Dr. Frederick Jacob Titus.
I've always known that. I've always known that too. But then, 2015, was this an opportunity for you now to show what you learned from this man?
No, not at all. For me, I always say God walks me in these paths. I don't know what I will be tomorrow. I was working and saving Dr. Chiluba. I didn't think that I would go anywhere else. In fact, during the process of humiliating Dr. Chiluba, fighting Dr. Chiluba, they offered me various jobs, including that job of a permanent secretary. And I refused. I said, I think God has placed me here to do a job. Let me finish my job. So other than they use carrot and, either a stick. So they use a carrot, you are not yielding to the carrot, and they come with a stick to try to destroy you, suppress you, break your back, that you don't do your job. When I became permanent secretary, I didn't plan for it. God prepared for it. Because both President Rupia Banda, when he had come, when we were winding up the funeral, promised me that I will appoint you as permanent secretary in Luapula or Northern Province. And guess where I was appointed? Of course, President Rupia Banda lost election. And President Michael Sata came. later into the position and gave me a job of PS Northern Province. It's like it doesn't matter which president is there. When God has given you a job, it will come to fruition. I was just telling you where President Michael Sata appointed me as ambassador to either Egypt or South Korea. A year later, I was serving as ambassador in South Africa. So God has a way of orchestrating things. If He's given you it to you, it will come. It doesn't matter. The personality is present there.
I hear you. But then let's fast forward to 2021, 12th of August. The party that you saw fought for in 2015, just so that it is not, it does not lose an election, because 2015 was very crucial. There were so many cartels surrounded around Patriotic Front, especially after the demise of President Sata. It was a big struggle. Patriotic Front were going to lose it. But look, you stood firm, you helped the party win and the president win, then Edgar Chagwa. But then, yes, the Patriotic Front had its own journey under President Lungu for 7 years, and they lost power in 2021, this year, 12th of August. When you look back, do you think PF really should have lost its power?
First of all,
or there was a bit of some carelessness around the success of this party.
It's a combination of many factors. But let me try to be fair.
Right.
The reign of President Edgar Lungu, which was a continuation of the reign of President Michael Sata, because it's the same party, same vision.
Right.
And some people misunderstood President Edgar Lungu when he said, I have no vision. I have the vision of the party. They would usually not finish the sentence because he carried the vision of the party. What was the vision of the party? It was pro-poor. It was a social democratic party. Its primary goal was to save the poor and workers. Its primary goal was to save the interest of workers and ordinary people, the poor. And you saw how deliberate they were. Even on issues of markets, there was a huge investment for the first time in the last 50 years to build new markets, to build new bus stops, because I think it was a pro-poor government and it was a pro-poor vision of the PF. Then there was an ambitious development to attend to infrastructure that had not been attended to in the last 50 years. The cause was noble. What caused the loss? Well, I've been away for the last 7 years. You know, I've been in foreign service the last 7 years. However, I am in touch with my country, with my superiors, and I was very interested, especially that, you know, I was driving economic diplomacy. So there were many times I brought investors in the country, you know, or interested parties just to promote our country. So why did the party lose power? Number one, the state of the economy. From 2015, we've never been spared the ravages of climate change. Remember the droughts, the floods, the energy shortage, the subsequent energy shortages. 2015, 2017, 2019. If it's 2020, you are to distribute food to certain regions of the country. So the state of the economy. And the crisis of COVID worsened issues in 2020, 2021. Number two, unemployment. Young people are unemployed. The rate of formal jobs is just about 1.1 million in this country. Yet you have over 10 million adults eligible to work. The informal sector is not properly supported. There is no finance for our people that are running SMEs. It's just a difficult environment. Even if you borrow to death because you might lose the property you have. Finance is expensive. Then our local people, whether they are marketeers, are not empowered. So there are those issues. Young people looking for education opportunities. Even when they get a university education place, they might not support it, because even education at the University of Zambia is very expensive. You have over 33,000 students, and government can only give bursaries to 2,500 or 3,000 people. So it's literally a drop in the ocean. Then there were inherent issues with the PF, such as cadreism and thuggerism, where cadres appeared to take center stage, and like they were not loyal or were not answerable even to institutions like the police.
Right.
Our people didn't like that. There were allegations of corruption, on senior leaders. So there were a catalogue of issues that when we were going to elections, it was, despite the numerous successes of the PF, there are people like the young people who were swing voters, who, for example, want a job. You saw them standing on a queue with gowns. Clearly, you know what they want, either education opportunity or they want a job. And we had registered a big number of young people on this register. And they determined the election. Did we see that the PF would lose elections? Of course, we had hoped for the best, that the work the party had done in the last 10 years would be appreciated by the voters. But the suitor, who was a UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema, recognized our failures and our mistakes. Oh, they have issues with young people. Wa youth chijob murimu. When I just become president, chijob murimu. Weekend ikalawama. You saw those Facebook postings. He said, I'll provide free education up to university and college level. And to the economy, he said, look, I'll repair this economy. We had a debt crisis. He said, well, there'll be a moratorium on debt. I will not borrow. I'll restructure this debt so that we have fiscal space to do development projects. To the business community, he says, I'm from the business sector. I'll reduce your costs associated with your business environment, including the exchange rate. So he had various messages that he pledged and promised to the various sectors and sets of voters. And he won the argument because the people of Zambia accepted his argument and voted for him, and voted for him overwhelmingly, with a difference of 1 million between himself and the incumbent.
But then you personally are known to be, a very aggressive campaigner, if I'm to put it that way. And it must have been very difficult. I'm not sure what, it entails for you as an ambassador. And also you have another hat that you need to protect your party. You need to help your party win. I mean, there's no way you could have come in any way to champion the campaign. I mean, how difficult was this? I mean, did you have the appetite to come and help the party? But
of course. But
limited?
I have limited roles because I'm a diplomat, I'm an ambassador. In fact, one of the things I did was that I wanted to participate in Kasama by-elections.
Yes.
I wanted to participate in the upcoming elections in 2021 by standing in Kasama. And to that effect, I brought my letter of resignation in December, which, His Excellency President Edgar Lungu rejected. And he felt that I was doing a good job in Addis Ababa and I should continue. So if I had resigned, probably I would have played an active role like the one I played in 2015.
Yeah.
But if you are a civil servant, you are a diplomat, you are an ambassador, you cannot campaign. I couldn't come here and say, vote for Edgar Lungu, don't vote for Hakainde Hichilema. My civil servant is bad. I could, in my role, is totally restricted. However, there's a small role I played where the president invited me to come and see how I could help package media information on government work and the works that they had done over the last 10 years, so that I could provide backroom role to my colleagues in the public media, because we are all civil servants, we all serve public, but we then craft messages just for government to demonstrate what government had done. So my role then was limited because I was a civil servant. Yeah, and my resignation, to go and pursue politics was declined. So
your resignation marked the beginning of your political career, if anything.
No. Remember, even when I was appointed as ambassador, High Commissioner to South Africa, I said I want to go into Kasama. I actually went into Kasama to campaign in 2015. Even when they gave me the appointment, until the president said, look, we've given you a job in South Africa, go and do it. So I abandoned Kasama, left it to my dear brother Kelvin Sampa, and and went to serve in South Africa and later in Ethiopia. So I've always wanted to go into politics, as demonstrated by those
So what
activities.
next for you? I mean, you seem to have high ambitions this time.
I am back, and I'm back to save my country, and I'm looking for opportunity to save it in whatever capacity. In this case, I am joining now at political service level. I'll be, participating in politics. And I've been a member of the Patriotic Front since 2002. And the party is now engaged, after the loss of elections, is engaged in activities to rebuild, restructure, and rebrand. And they want to understand why they lost elections. They want to prepare how they can be a formidable opposition in the next 5 years and probably reclaim power by 2026. I want to participate in that process.
Now, there are a lot of issues around this process. Let's start with the fact that there is you who is ambitious and you want to give it a go at the leadership of the Patriotic Front. And I think, is it a day or two ago, the acting SG, met presidential hopefuls, and you were among them. How do you then say the few of you, I think, that we saw in that picture that you posted, are the only presidential hopefuls? I mean, have you floated this to every member of the Patriotic Front?
No, not at all. First of all, the calendar is not open. The party has a structure. They've stated that we'll go to an election, to the convention or conference in 2022, June 2022. They will issue electoral laws and the calendar, and it will be open. Are the people you saw in the picture the only ones? I think not. There could be more. Where were we invited? The acting Secretary General felt that he needed to consult with us, myself, Honorable Chimbaka Mbwili, Honorable Given Lubinda, who's our Vice President, and Honorable Brian Munduvile, who is our leader of the opposition in Parliament. And I think the issue was that there is need for all of us to work together. There is a process the party has embarked on. Let us rebuild this party. Let us restructure its leadership. Let us then rebrand. And there is a calendar. And currently there are assignments. For example, we have 9 seats that have been petitions are nullified, and they are now on. There's an appeal process going on. We have Kabwata by-election coming on, where the party has begun the process to pick a candidate, and we've been deployed that we could help in those assignments.
And there's a rumor that you are likely to be the candidate.
No, I've not applied. I've no relationship with Kabwata. I will not be that opportunistic. But I will walk into campaign and speak to our young people and our voters there. There is a list of people that wish to stand. I think they've published it. We'll see who the party pick.
So what's your plan as a party for Kabwata? I mean, was this meeting also? I mean, you've just stated that this meeting that you had with the SG also pointed out the issue of Kabwata being a critical assignment. How critical is this assignment? I mean, and are we not likely to see some presidential hopefuls also throwing in their own agendas during the campaigns for this?
I think that was the purpose of the meeting, that there should be common purpose, that we should be moving in unity. All of us, let's prioritize first the issues of the party. Yesterday you saw I was wearing an ANC t-shirt, a shirt that I was given by a very senior member of the ANC as a gift to me. The purpose I wore the ANC t-shirt is I admire it. It's a social democratic party like the PF. It's been in existence since 1912. The party only took power 82 years later in 1994. It's currently 109 years old. Why has the ANC survived for over 100 years? It's the oldest political party in Africa in existence. Why? Because The institutions are well strengthened. Policy organs, such as its leadership and structures, are very well and democratic entrenched. Its conferences are well regulated. The leadership structure between conferences, that 5-year period, also is very strengthened. The president is not the only one with powers. They have a top 6 who determine on behalf of the Central Committee before they meet as a Central Committee. So the ANC is a very good party to learn from. You can learn from Chama cha Mapinduzi from Tanzania, also its resilience. You can go to Namibia. There are certain political parties that you can see. Why did I wear an ANC t-shirt yesterday? It's for those values that, for example, I want to bring to, to wherever I'm associated with, that strengthen institutions, not personalities. When the political party, if a leader of the political party is removed, the party should not die. These institutions should be resilient to carry anyone. It could be Emmanuel Mwamba, it could be anyone else. For the Patriotic Front, we have lessons to learn, and I wish that the party will commission a research on why UNIP failed to come back. They were the largest opposition. I mean, they were the party for 27 years. When they went in opposition, they were the largest opposition, and for UNIP, they even had assets across the country. So why didn't they come back? What was the issue? Why did Zambians not buy into them? Why did they relegate them to the history? Similarly, the MMD failed to come back. What are the issues? Why didn't Zambians buy into MMD? Why didn't they pay attention to it? They said, you've kept power for 20 years, you lost it. They looked elsewhere. They looked to the UPND. In this case, will the PF suffer the same fate? So there's need to pick lessons from why UNIP and MMD didn't come back to power.
There are always questions that I have for people like you, where if today you sit and point out the wrongs of the current government, and then you get feedback that you too did it. In fact, you did it the worst way, And people are saying, if you are saying today that there was this Kadarism that made you lose an election as Patriotic Front, which people didn't like, people are saying, why didn't you speak? Why didn't you speak at the time when you had the privilege to speak, when your party was in power?
Personally, I served as an ambassador and I was in South Africa and Ethiopia. If I engaged in partisan politics or carrying home, what would my bosses, Secretary to Cabinet and my permanent secretary and my minister would have said? They would say, Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, why are you participating in local politics? Did I advise? I advised using my position regularly. There are various colleagues, ministers that I would call, many times even the president, to give advice to what you think is going wrong or what you think should not be done. Internally, I did all I could. But as an ambassador, I have a duty. My work, I'm working at the African Union. And the schedule there sometimes goes up to 22 hours every day. You are seated in those long meetings. Sometimes you are traveling. So you have an assignment that the country has given you. And you do not want to be distracted by issues or carrying home. But extreme issues, I engaged. Either the particular minister or particular official involved. In many cases, when it required that I give advice, I gave advice to my colleagues at State House. I would call my brother, Kaiser Zulu or Amos Chanda or anyone else. I said, but see what you can do. You're the guys in charge. Remember, the president has his own advisors. Right. He has his own infrastructure of ministers. Then he has a political party with a leadership. So he has various instruments before him to help him achieve what he wishes to achieve. Yeah.
So then let's now discuss your thoughts on...
There's something we need to say there.
Yeah.
That people are saying, you're not qualified to discuss the mistakes of President Hakainde Hichilema and UPND. Keep quiet. The PF made a lot of mistakes. Just keep quiet.
And you kept quiet.
We will destroy this country. A mistake done by PF or any other party before it
Must be a lesson.
should not be repeated by this government. Then we are failing to learn lessons. We are failing to understand why we went to an election in the first place. Because you have to understand issues that Zambians objected to, rejected, and you have to understand the wishes of Zambians in the leadership they ushered in. What were the wishes of Zambians? So when you begin to, for example, use the law to persecute your opponents, Zambians are standing by and say, but we thought we went to an elections. If you are abusing the law to punish political opponents, but if you are using the corruption fight in a selective manner, driven by politics, not by crime or evidence, Zambians are getting surprised. Said, but I thought we changed. Yes, we want you to fight corruption, but we don't want you to use a fight against corruption to settle your political scores, to settle political vengeance. I saw a statement by the Inspector General of Police where he said he will go to all cases going up to 2015. And then you are just arresting PF members. Well, there are no crimes committed by UPND. And remember, the two political parties engaged in brutal violence for many years. The offenses were done by both parties. You know. So if you say you're going back to crimes up to 2015, be fair, be equitable, apply the law, not in a partisan manner, apply the law in the interest of justice.
If I got the IG correct, I think he meant all cases that have been petitioned now. I think most of these cases, yes, they were done, and probably evidence is not there anymore for the police themselves just to pick it up. But they are relying on the fact that there are UPND members who are petitioning the IG to have case A and case B, which was committed a long time ago, be revisited. And the PF are not doing that for the cases against the UPND, maybe.
The police should not be a tool of the UPND. The police is a constitutional creature. They are created by the Constitution. They should act professionally. They should not act on the whims of any political party, either the PF or the UPND. I was sad when they arrested my dear brother Nakachinda, because his arrest was preceded by a petition by the UPND at Lusaka Central Police here, where they demanded for his arrest. And the following day he was summoned to Chelston Police Station. Will I be wrong to assume that the police have received instructions from a political party? The police, as stated, in fact, by the President Hakainde Hichilema, is that he wants him to be professional. He wants that entity to be professional. He was a victim of its abuse several times. He was arrested over 15 times. So why would he want the repeat of the same offenses and the abuse of state institutions against him? If state institutions were used to fabricate lies against him, why is he allowing state institutions to work and fabricate lies against his political opponents and people like me who are speaking? There should be a departure, firm departure. We should understand that Zambians went to an elections. Zambians want things done better. We can't be doing things the way we're doing them in the past. Then we are not listening to our people. We are not understanding why our people changed governments. We need to pay attention to that. This country needs to be led and led better. And our opportunity to serve this president is a seventh president. He's not the first president. So our opportunity to serve primarily should be driven by the needs and needs and aspirations of our people, nothing else. If our people say justice, some money was stolen, do it in a professional manner, But what we've seen so far the last 3 months is that state institutions, despite the promise that they'll be independent, that they will be professional, in fact are worse, because within 100 days they've been quickly turned into, unleashed as to punish political opponents. I think that's not the purpose of the law. That's not the purpose you hold power.
My understanding of the sudden awakening of these security wings is the fact that now they can breathe and work using their own mandate, because the issue here is that during the PF regime, these institutions did not have the freedom. Some of them were confessing how their lives were threatened for being audited. How they were told.
I've worked in government for 20 years. That's a lie, and this government should not buy those lies. You know, we're regulated by, for example, financial regulations, the SEC, the DEC. These are institutions created by the Constitution. If you're an office holder, a minister has stolen, and you're pursuing the minister, and the minister threatens you, resign if you can't do it. You know. And personally, I've demonstrated that in the various offices I have held, that I will discharge my mandate. It doesn't matter the political interference. I've been given this job and I've been insulated by the law. Look at the Auditor General's reports for the last 10 years. They are very stinging. They are very strong. How did the officers at the Auditor General do their job? So if anyone at the SEC or DEC or police said they failed to do their job because there was political pressure, they are totally lying. They just want you to keep their job. These are insulated institutions.
But how wouldn't it be political interference and very difficult to work if I'm going to be prosecuting a minister who is still coming to court in a government vehicle, for example? What message are you sending, first of all, to the justice? What message are you sending to those investigating? Because I think on that matter,
let me explain.
Yeah.
That particular matter, where a minister was arrested by the SEC and retained his position, was a very difficult matter for all of us. I remember that my dear brother Anton Mukwita was dealing with a matter in Germany where the German government decided to withhold funding, particularly on that matter. And he consulted me, and the two of us forged hands to persuade the president that there are these concerns. Maybe the minister should stand down and allow the process to be complete. Mm-hmm. You know, besides, the Constitution guarantees that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that the minister is guilty. But you heard the president then, you know, he gave his explanation that the SEC came to me that Chimba Kambwili is corrupt, we're investigating him, we'll probably win these cases. And he was never even taken to court after the president relieved him of his duties. And decided two other similar cases where the president had acted in the interest of the law, and the reports from the SEC came to nothing. You see what I mean? I have been calling for reforms to the law enforcement agencies. They have a habit, every time there's a new government, for them to survive, they take these trophy cases to please the political leadership. They want to please the president that they are working. And they play these games. They played it on Manawasa. They played it on President Rupiah Banda. They played it on President Michael Sata. They played it even on Edgar Lungu. They are still doing it. We need to reform law enforcement agencies.
So you can't blame it on leadership. You can't blame it on the president.
Yeah.
If what you're saying is there are gray areas in these.
There are. That we need to strengthen them. You have, for example, the SEC Director General is insulated by law. He enjoys position like that of judges. He can't be fired. Is what I mean. We've provided security of tenure to the DG at SEC. And I wish that the president should appoint one professional person there. And the ratification has been taken to Parliament. This is one of the ways in which to protect the institution, that they can discharge their mandate without fear or favor, without resorting to these tendencies to please the political leadership that we are working. Even when there is corruption in your new government, they are looking away. But they are busy with odd cases so that they please you that they are working. If they are fighting corruption, it doesn't matter where the corruption occurs, whether it's in your government or the previous government. They should be blind to these political appeasements that they've been engaged in. The president said no one should be arrested and kept in police cells for beyond, for example,
First of all, no one should be
24
arrested
hours.
before they are investigated.
Yes, first there should be credible investigations.
Right.
And even when you arrest them, ensure that they have bond if the matter is bondable, because the police have that discretion. And if it's not bondable, process it speedily and bring it to court, so that then they are free to apply for bail. That's not happening. You saw the case of Davis Chama, who's the vice chairperson of the Patriotic Front. They wanted him for an odd case in 2015. They arrested him, bundled him in a vehicle, packed him in Livingstone for 11 days. He only got his bail after 11 days. Similarly, Kampyongo, whose opposition whip is a member of parliament for Shwangandu. And he's needed in Shwangandu for some odd case, 2015 case. They arrest him, bundle him in a Land Cruiser and make him travel the whole night. And I saw on social media justification that, but you did the same to Romeo Kangombe. You did the same to the president. So if wrongs were committed by PF, you should repeat them. Are we using the law for vengeance? Are we using the law for retribution? Are we using the law for recrimination?
Maybe it's an issue of saying, this is how the police operate. They can arrest you and take you to
That's why I'm calling for reforms. The police know that if they arrest Kampyongo and they humiliate him, the UPND leadership will be very excited. That's a cheap way of running national affairs. Let's not do things to please and appease. Let's follow the law. Let's bring integrity to these institutions. Why was Kanganja insulted every day by politicians? So does Kajoba want us to begin also hailing insults at him because of the manner he's running the police? Of course not. I think there's been a change of government. There's a new philosophy the president wishes to achieve. Unless a president is telling Zambians in one breath in the day, and in the night they're planning something else to humiliate the opposition, to destroy the opposition. Unless that is the way. And then we should rise and condemn. Not condemn Kajwa, then condemn the president for hypocrisy and for lies. What he says in the day should be practiced in the night. If the president says, I'll bring professionalism to these institutions, we expect him to do so. If the president says he will professionalize the civil service, I don't expect the president to appoint political opponents, active political participants to the civil service. You are aware of the case of my dear brother, P.S. Akafumba, who's been appointed as Permanent Secretary at Home Affairs. Mm-hmm. He was NDC president until a few weeks ago. He held an active position. He participated in the alliance as a presidential candidate, although they had one candidate. He supported their candidate as an alliance. How do you bring him in the civil service? You are aware of my dear brother, Patrick Mcheleka, my own brother, who has been Deputy Secretary General of the party for many years, and who participated in elections in Wansenshi. You appoint him as Permanent Secretary. Aren't you politicizing the civil service? There is even a sad case of Tabo Kawana, which I've been saying probably we need to litigate against it, where they've created a position for Tabo Kawana of director spokesperson. Directors and below are purely civil servants. For permanent secretaries, the president has discretion. He can appoint anyone he wishes to. Although he's going against his word that we will appoint professionals and will professionalize the civil service, we want him to live up to that. But for the case of Tabo Kawana, who's been appointed as a media director at a Ministry of Information and Media, it's totally illegal. You don't create a position for an individual. You create a position blind to whoever will occupy it. After you've created it, Management Service Division makes the recommendations. It goes to PSMD, Public Service Management Division, and then you seek Treasury authority from the Secretary to Treasury. When that authority is granted, then you subject the position, because it's a new position, to competition. Let me cite the law that says this. The Service Commission number 10 of 2016, we have a section there, section 4, which speaks on values and principles of human resource management. It says in the civil service, positions should be on merit, on fairness, they should be competitive, and there should be non-discrimination in people getting those positions. All these have been violated in the case of Tabukawana. And you can read it together with statutory instrument number 103 of December 2020. This was to strengthen the provision in the Act when we saw the politicization of civil service, and Secretary to Cabinet issued this statutory instrument. So if the president promises one thing in one breath and does another thing in another breath, we have a duty to call him out. Sir, live up to your demands. Your Excellency, you said you professionalize the civil service. Professionalize it. Your Excellency, you said you reduce fuel. Why are you increasing it? Give us explanations. And I think it's our duty to remind the president of all these things. We went to an election for heaven's sake. Let's do things differently. And let's not repeat the mistakes of the PF or any other party. I've always stated that this president has no reason to fail. He can learn from 6 past presidents. However, because we maintain the same systems, they make the previous president lose power, and they begin to perpetuate the same ills, the same corruptions, the same abuse of the law, even with the new president, and the new president gets the flack. We've become aware that they are constantly abusing single sourcing. Single sourcing in the tender process is used, Zach, for emergencies. They're beginning to use that law to perpetuate corruption. You are aware of the fertilizer tender where there was an extension given to a particular company to the tune of $50 million. And they used that law where there was no tender, public tender, and where there was no advertisement. They use a law to perpetuate corruption. And that is also happening in the petroleum sector where they're trying to do emergency procurement using that law where they don't advertise it. They just pick you, Zach, and pick Patrick and Slumesi, my dear brother, and said, the 3 of you bring your I was permanent secretary, so I understand how this works. You invite 3 people, they bring you proposals and you approve. No public tender, no open tender, no open process. The very thing His Excellency the President condemned in opposition. So I think it's our duty and the duty of government that all of us save the people of Zambia and their interests.
Mm. And, the performance so far of the UPND government, how would you rate it? It's too early to...
No, not at all. First, let's start with the crisis. What crisis do we have as a country? We have a huge foreign debt of $12.9 billion. We have a domestic debt of over 187 billion kwacha. Remember, we haven't paid our contractors, our suppliers. There's no money in this economy because of this huge debt. How much is 187 billion kwacha? That translates to something like $10 billion. $11 billion. We have arrears that we've accumulated. We all sectors, like even the suppliers of fuel, to an extent of $500 million. So the state of the economy is in dire straits. But what solutions are we deploying? IMF. Is IMF the solution to our crisis? Why don't we learn from our history, Zach? We were in a similar position in 1990, 1991, where the economy had collapsed, where we had a huge debt, foreign debt of $7 billion. And at the time, our GDP, our economy was only at $3 billion. So you can imagine the overhang of that debt, how it was on our economy. We had shortages, and state-owned enterprises were running at spaces of losses. And the Harvard boys from Washington came as IMF. And they just said, any loss-making company, close, liquidate, sell. That's your solution. Save money. We even closed Zambia Airways that had infrastructure in Dar es Salaam, in the United Kingdom, in New York, that had various planes and had various assets there in Charleston. And
Don't you think that's logic? You don't need someone to come and tell you this is non-profit making, sell it. I mean, it's logic.
No,
If
no,
you're
it is not.
If you're in business, then you should know.
A country is not a company. You have lives of people. Your decisions that you make might make business sense, but might not make socio-economic
Isn't that why the reason why we are told government should not do business? But government did business instead those days. I'm sure that's why IMF came and told you what to do.
So these boys from Washington come and tell you what to do to the detriment of your economy. Because when the program was complete, we had given up the mines. Many companies closed and were liquidated or were shut or were stripped. There was stripping of assets. And the current unemployment levels is traced from our decisions in the 1990s.
Right.
We don't seem to have learned anything. Fast forward, 2010, the IMF came and they said, you are now a lower middle income country. You don't need to borrow from IMF and multilateral institutions like ourselves. You should go to the market because your economy now is resilient. It's a low middle income country. You remember even some embassies like Sweden and others and their NGOs closed and moved to Zimbabwe because we're no longer a poor country. They said we're now a low middle income country. And they sent us to the Eurobond markets. We didn't go to the Eurobond markets. If we had people with spine, they would have said, no, IMF tuwakane. If tukala kongola kudimu, because I'm alone here, you have 0.0%. Ukomune tutwala, the period is short, it's 10 years, and the interest rates are very high. We can't afford. But we allowed them to come and they shepherded us to the market. So we borrowed from both the markets and from the Chinese. 10 years later, they are telling you have a debt of $12.9 billion. You over-borrowed, you overburdened, and now they're coming with solutions.
You even defaulted on one.
Yes, now they're coming with solutions. It's like we never learn anything.
But in this case, don't you think that the current government has been left in a situation where at the end of the day, you need to make such sacrifices?
So I'm disagreeing with the solutions they're deploying.
Because then
this economy, remember,
it's an issue of borrowing a cheaper loan to offset an expensive loan, and that's what I think.
Yeah. So let us start with the same process. In opposition, the president said he would restructure the debt. He would not borrow at all. You've seen in the national budget he wants to borrow. I say he wants to borrow because the minister's statement to Parliament for the budget speech, he represents the president. He wants to borrow $4.2 billion to finance the budget next year, and there's even a huge deficit that they've opened up. That's against what he said, that there will be a moratorium, will not borrow at all. We'll live within our means until we restructure our economy, and our biggest issue is the debt. We'll deploy efforts to ensure that we restructure it. We extend this period of repayment. Remember, we have one, the 750 million is due in 2022, and then 2024 and 2025, the other 2.3 billion that is due. So he said he will restructure it so that there's a longer repayment period, and then we will deal with the economy. Live within our means. But by borrowing $4.2 billion, are you living within your means? Why are you going back on your word, which you stated? So I am disagreeing with the solutions. We agree with the state of crisis, the economic crisis. We agree we have an economic crisis. But I'm saying the solutions we are deploying have no sense of history. The IMF have never succeeded anywhere, including in Zambia, where we have brought them several times. This over-reliance on the IMF is our biggest weakness. And you can call as many economists as possible. I personally, no matter how much they agree on that solution, it's not a solution at all. The IMF have never succeeded. In the 60s, they would give billions to people like Mobutu.
So what should we have done as a country? What should we have done as a country, especially in the fact that we have a loan due?
Let's devise our local program. Let's exploit our national.
But those are long term.
Yeah,
those are long term.
No, they are not.
For the immediate, if you have a loan due 2022, you can't plan an industry. You can't plan opening up a new mine, because this will not be viable in the next period when this loan is due.
In 2021,
he's in a very difficult situation.
No, it's a difficult situation.
If this loan was due in the next 3 years, for example, I don't think he would have taken this move.
Yeah, it's in a difficult situation. We all appreciate. Right. We are differing with the solutions. For example, what house? I don't know whether you are working or not, but you have to pay rent. These people are digging holes in our country. They are damaging our environment. And they are taking that resource we have forever. It will not be recreated. So you charge them rent. That's what mineral royalty tax is. This Minister of Finance has abolished it. You saw, and he says
doing this for the second time. He did abolish it even when he was Minister of Finance.
That's why it's like economists went to one school and they don't learn from the mistakes of the past.
But when you hear other stakeholders like chambers of mines,
let me answer.
This is the best move.
The chambers of mines own the mines. If I live in your house and you tell me I shouldn't pay rent, I will celebrate. All the tenants can have a rally in Lusaka. If our landlords said don't pay rent, we will have a rally in Lusaka to praise the landlords for giving us free rent. You see what I mean? The Chamber of Mines should be the best to celebrate. They are being told you not pay rent on the mines you own, on the damage you are doing. Of course, the rationale is they say that we want you then to use those profits to reinvest back in the mines to up production to 3 million. Has that ever happened? How many times did Vedanta promise $1.5 billion to this country? If you look at their speeches from 2002 to date, they keep on promising billions we've never seen. How many times have we seen these investors pledge and promise we are bringing to you? And ZDA even records, this year we have pledged investment of $3 billion from this sector. Do they fulfill it? We have ghost towns on the Copper Belt. And you know, mining is highly mechanized. First Quantum has one bucket which costs $26 million. It does work for over 10,000 people, just one bucket. So mining is no longer what it was, where it was a mass employer and our people could benefit from it. So when you abolish mineral royalty tax, you abolish the rent, you are doing a disservice to this country. The minister himself said he will lose next year $200 million, which is 3.1 billion kwacha, because of his decision. Okay, so you are getting a loan of $1.4 billion from the IMF in a period of 3 years. When your sector, like last year, it earned you $600 million, why are you foregoing local and domestic income? So, in my view, I disagree with this tendency by our economists to assume that the IMF is a solution. Look at the history. They have never been successful anywhere. So the continued belief, and you know, they bring alongside commercial interests. And we go and surrender all our hearts to the IMF and we present them as a solution to this country when they are not. That is what I'm objecting about this government. They don't seem to learn from history. The current debt we have is as a result of the IMF. The privatization that deindustrialized our country, where we were a manufacturing hub in the region. Look at the industries we had in Ndola and light industry in Lusaka, in Kitwe. They are all gone because of those policy decisions. And the IMF never apologizes. Every year they have a new set of Harvard boys that come to do experiment on Africa. So when we say caution, learn from history, it's not that we want to scandalize the relationship between the IMF and Zambia. It's not that. All we are saying is take caution. Develop your own local program, exploit your own resources. You have gold Gold in this country is like an outbreak. It is in Mumbai, it's in Rufunsa, it's in Vubwi, it's in Winilunga. Gold is everywhere. The mines in Northwestern Province, someone stated we should call them for what they are. They're actually gold mines, they are not copper mines, because of the value of the gold they exploit from those mines. Why don't we sit seriously and get benefits from our own resources? Why do we believe a loan from IMF will redeem us? Isn't it yoking us? Because they'll tell us to sell Zesco. They'll tell us to sell Zanaco. They'll tell you to unbundle all your and commercialize. And so why don't we learn from history? That is my concern about placing the IMF as your primary solutions to the economic crisis that we face.
My guest this morning on the burning issue is Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, and we've discussed quite a number of issues. It's time for you, our listeners, to also be a part of this particular program by calling in on 0955-221515. So we'll take a few calls. Good morning. Morning to you. How are you? Oswald, welcome. I'm well.
And Ditaba Oswald, good morning. Thank you very much, Oswald. Thank you very much.
I'll
I'm
take a few
grateful.
more on 0955-221515. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning to you. Welcome to the program. Your name, sir?
Va prominent mulishani. Kulishani kumarapodi. Yeah, tufune tuwaleta treni.
Because of the line which the big opposition is ruling party president today,
Yes.
Thank you, Vanoa. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me check those, Zach. Let me check those.
Can I give you one more text?
Okay, thank you.
Let me give you one more text. This one says, please remind, good morning, Ambassador Mwamba. Okay, so please remind that man that his former SG, Davis Mwila, while campaigning in Luapula this year, told the people of Luapula that the PF need to campaign so hard and win this election. Because most ministers will be arrested if they lose this election to UPND. Mr. Mwamba, you also came early from Ethiopia to campaign for the Patriotic Front as an ambassador. And you also fired the civil servant from the embassy when it was not your duty, sir. This is Kay. So maybe Kay wants to say the former SG knew of the crimes of his own ministers and members of parliament. So it was inevitable that they will be arrested one day.
No. Honorable Davis Mwila has been in politics. Remember, he was Treasurer General of the Mine Workers Union of Zambia for many years. He understands every time there's a cycle of change of leadership where the new government uses power and the law to harm the previous holders of those offices and their predecessors. It's not that he was condoning or tolerating, he was just educating people that there's a tendency in this country where you use state institutions to abuse your political opponents. And what he said, this will visit you, work hard and get power. Not that he said you've committed crimes and they'll come after you. No. There is a cycle that we need to change. Things have been talking about it, and that's why I'm calling for reforms on law enforcement agencies. We need to encourage them to be more professional. They need to resort more to the Constitution and the laws that protect them than to politicians and political parties. But prominent, Kumarapod na Oswald are talking about the issue of tightening the belts, and as a result of the fuel increase, we are now beginning to see ripple effects. You saw the announcements by RATSA where bus fares have been increased, both local bus fares and intercity and intertown bus fares have been increased by up to 34%. And these are the issues we are talking to. What is the solution to the fuel crisis? Look, we are privileged that Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda and his colleagues invested, were very far-sighted. They knew we are landlocked, and they invested in Indeni, which is a refinery, but they also invested in a pipeline running from Dar es Salaam all the way up to Ndola, almost 2,000 kilometers. This is a huge investment. If you were to quantify it now, it will run into billions of dollars. Why don't we attend to the issues around the pipeline and Indeni? If Indeni's capacity is low, why don't we expand it? Why don't we promote investment there? Why are we bringing millions and millions of liters of fuel to this country on the backs of trucks? The damage to the roads, the cost of transport, is extremely huge when you put it on trucks. Why don't we conduct those reforms? And coming to this fuel increase, government must explain, because what the previous government did, what we are calling subsidy, was to remove the taxes associated with fuel. So they removed import duty, which is 25%. They removed excise duty, and they removed VAT, which is 16.5%. This is what you are calling subsidies. Government is not investing direct money. Even when the minister said we are spending $67 million on this, he's talking about foregoing the taxes that could have been collected on fuel. Up to $42 million of that is related to taxes. And the difference is the exchange rate loss, which they are financing, and some associated cost to transport.
And others are also saying...
So is that a fuel increase? What have they done? Have they reinstated the taxes, or they've just put a fuel increase without the taxes being reinstated? Government needs to explain.
But if the taxes are what you are saying were the subsidies in the previous PF, so it automatically means removing those subsidies and reinstate the taxes, isn't it?
So is that what they've done? I don't know. Because the PF government removed 25% import duty on petroleum products. They were defined: petrol, diesel, kerosene, jet fuel.
The argument in that is that most of these OMC are foreign companies, and they are the ones enjoying this.
Oh yeah, of course. That's why we talk of the cartel. That the issue is to remove middlemen. Every time you bring in middlemen, the profits will go to the middlemen, and the ordinary people bear the brunt of the costs and the presence of middlemen. We have infrastructure in this country to import fuel ourselves, pump it to Indeni, and distribute it. If Indeni has issues, let us resolve it. But we've seen the perpetuation where they are replacing, previous suppliers with their new suppliers. Kalilo. It's our time to eat. They were eating, we are now also coming to eat. And we need to condemn that. I think our attitude should be to reform and make it cheaper for our people. And fuel can be brought in this country at a cheaper price, Zach.
We'll take some more on 0955-221515. Good morning. Hello, good morning. You're through to the burning issue? I'm fine, thank you. Isaac from within Lusaka, please go ahead. I've got Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba as our guest.
Isaac Mulishani. Okay.
An election. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Yeah. Now we hear you. Thank you very much, Isaac. Let me give you another interesting question. Hi, moderator. Kindly ask Mr. Mwamba for me the following questions. One, him being in power just a while ago, why didn't they use the solutions which he is articulating to get us out of the mess? Secondly, he is speaking against the IMF. Why was he quiet when his government was pursuing the same IMF in the past 7 years? Thirdly, his government was collecting mineral royalties all along. Why did they default on the debt? Why didn't they use the same money to pay off the debt? This is Justin. I find this very interesting question.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me start with Isaac, who's complaining that to his knowledge,
Right.
President Hakainde Hichilema knew the state of the economy. And he's an economist, a very engaging economist and auditor. So
And he always said he had information.
Yes, he had information up to his fingertips. The PF government began to conduct, when debt was rising at that stage, I think was $7 billion in 2017, invited the IMF for a program with the IMF. And the IMF demanded that there should be a crafted debt sustainability program. And in this program, among other things, government was compelled to disclose its debt, whether it was Eurobond, whether it was Chinese debt, and private debt. Give us a list of everyone that owes you the money. Because to make you sustainable with your debt, we need to know who you owe. So the information of how much debt we have, how much subsidies we were paying on fuel, on electricity. Remember they said it should be cost reflective, raise it up, and there was even an increment. And how much we're spending in the agricultural sector, especially the FISIP program, the Farmer Input Support Program. They also demanded for associated information like project financing. For example, if state-owned institutions like ZESCO or private lenders from Norway or anywhere, they said disclose this to us. This information has been available since 2017. So I have seen various government officials come to the media and said the president didn't know the extent of the state of the economy, didn't know the extent of these issues. That is a lie. It's a patent lie. This information has been public since 2017. I'm not in government. I wanted to find out, for example, how we dealt with the so-called subsidy. It just took me 1 hour to get all the information relating to the taxes that were suspended. I am not in government, but I was able to get that information. So the issue that government and President Hakainde Hichilema was not aware of the state of the economy, was not aware the extent, for example, in the fuel sector, it's just a lie. He knew, he articulated on the issues and on the information he was given, and to a large extent, his information was accurate. So let me go to the issues of Justin. He says, I'm propounding good solutions here. Why didn't I provide them to the PF since, the outgoing government provided for? And he says the IMF... You are the mineral road. Yeah, the IMF pursued for 7 years. They pursued, the PF government for 7 years pursued the IMF. Deal, yeah. So my answer will be very clear. They are personal positions and collective decisions. I was not in cabinet and I was not president. But in my personal capacity, I think you've been following Zach. From 2017, 2018, I've written analysis how harmful the IMF have been and how we are not learning from it in my personal capacity. So my view has always been that whether to the PF, and I'm aware, because let's start with Honorable Felix Mtati was Minister of Finance from 2016 to, I think, 2017. He pursued the IMF program. He engaged in a program with them. Honorable Margaret Mwanakatwe, she continued on the same path. For Honorable Walyangandu, he was at the verge of clinching the deal, except for two sticky issues. Number one, that we remove all fuel subsidies. Number two, that we remove the price of electricity, we make it cost reflective. So yes, the PF was pursuing the IMF, but my views, as demonstrated by the articles I've written since 2017, is that the reliance on the IMF is harmful to this country. Let us devise programs that can enable us, earn from our natural resources, equitable money. We've been in existence for the last 57 years. We have been private sector from our economy has been driven by the private sector from 1964 to 1968. We nationalized up to 1991. We went private. And then you saw President Michael Sata tried to bring state-owned enterprises, and new ones were created, including the IDC. We've had all these experiments with both the IMF, World Bank, and our internal processes running with the private sector or the role of the state in the economy. Why at this stage don't we devise something that will benefit our people by relying on our natural resources, not on these foreign lending and on these debts? In fact, we just get our own money back. We just borrow our own money back.
And that's the question that Justin is asking. If we had all these natural resources, for example, especially the mineral royalties, all this time for the past 10 years of PF government, why then did we have to default on a date?
Or why did we default?
Because you initially, you were saying, if the current Minister of Finance says he's going to lose out millions of dollars next year for obviously foregoing mineral royalties, and you were saying, then why wouldn't we use the same mineral royalties to pay off the debt, for example? And this question now is coming back to say, but you had the mineral royalties all along, and why didn't you pay the debt? Why did you default on the debt?
Yeah, so it's very simple. Because we went to the markets. First, let's discuss the structure of the budget. You know, our budget, we are spending up to 53% of our domestic revenue on paying public service pay, paying civil servants that are just about 200,000 against a population of 18.2 million people. Then the issue of debt service has been rising from 17% now to excesses of 40%. I saw some recent figures going up to 77%, meaning that the money we are raising ourselves as a country can't even pay both our debt service and can't even pay our civil servant. It has to be cushioned by debt. So therein lies your problem. You have to look at your budget and begin to restructure it. If your budget is paying half of its money of your domestic revenue to pay salaries year in, month in, month out, when will you have enough money to attend to the 18 million people and their needs, the infrastructure needs, the services that you have to provide? So it demonstrates the extent of the crisis. So even when you have mineral royalties, it becomes a drop into what you are doing. This economy requires major reforms, and we should accept that it requires major reforms. I called for a national endeavor, that we all should sit on one table and agree what we need to do to this economy. No one government, no one party official, no president has all the wisdom. Yes, we respect the president as a 5-year mandate. He's been elected by the people of Zambia, and they've given him a mandate to do whatever he wants until he reports to the Zambians in the next 5 years. We recognize that. But there's no harm in calling, the gifted people, our educated people in this country, at an indaba, where we begin to address these issues. Because even our budget is not sustainable. It doesn't take us out of the pit that we are currently in.
I will take the last set of calls. I will just take about 3 questions. So we'll take the first one. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you today?
So me, I am okay.
Good, good.
You are talking to Washman, yeah.
Mr. Chironda, please go ahead.
Tiri bwino bashimagi ichi chinyanja mwamposha chinyanja, these old languages muri bwanji. ndiwe mbuya wanga, so it's okay.
For us, what we don't
Thank you. Thank you very much. We take two more and then we conclude on 0955-221515. Good morning. Hello, good morning. Morning. Welcome to the program. Mr. Mundoe. Please go ahead.
Please go and test for COVID. COVID now, we say we want your life. We want you, my brother. You are a productive member of this citizen. Mkwai. Endi tayama mulishani.
Other than the flu. Sure. Yes. Yes. Indeed.
True, true.
Mm. Mm. Thank you very much, Mr. Mundoe, for that. And unfortunately, I won't take any more calls. Let's wind up by responding to Mr. Chilonda and Mr. Mundo.
Yeah, let's start with Washmagi. He says no one has been detained for more than 3 days. Of course, I think he wasn't listening because I gave the case of Honorable Davis Chama, who was detained for 11 days and was police custody for 11 days. Mr. Nundwe has brought out very key issues. Most of our state-owned enterprises were very thriving, especially the remnants we currently have, like Zambia Sugar, Chilanga Cement, Zambia Breweries. These were very thriving companies. The case of Zambia Airways. Do you liquidate a company that has more assets than its current loss in a year? You don't, because Zambia Airways had assets that were far more valuable than the difficulties they were facing. You restructure, you streamline, you shed and ensure that then it runs profitably. And for there are institutions like National Airlines that you have to keep sometimes at a subsidy because of the value they bring to the economy. We are a closed economy. We are a landlocked country. We have to rely on other people to reach, for example, for our exports and imports. Other seaports like Dar es Salaam, Durban, or Beira, or Lobito Bay. So there are critical investments that President Kaunda did to ensure that we overcome these difficulties and our geographical location. So do you liquidate Zambia Airways? South African Airways has been kept for years because it brings in up to 20 million tourists a year. So why would you close it? Even if it's running losses on its books, the country can subsidize it because of the larger value it brings. There were no such considerations. There was just carte blanche. You make losses, close, liquidated, be sold. The economy should run by the private sector. And we moved from running the economy from 99% to 20%, where we trusted the private sector, and up to 10%, 20%, where we said the private sector will be run by 80%. The government will be run, the economy will be run up to 80% by the private sector. Right. Yeah. These policies are not even suitable for Africa because of our poverty levels, our underdevelopment, our lack of infrastructure. Some of these policies may make sense in Europe, but they can't apply here because of the kind of burden we are carrying. And remember, we have a history. We're victims of slavery. We're victims of colonialism. We are currently victims of neocolonialism, where the wealth of our country is not in the hands of our people. So you need to recognize the current state you are in before you deploy solutions, not solutions that will perpetuate the adverse effects that we have learned in the past history. And Mr. Nundo brings out very critical issues. That, for example, 400 kg of emeralds, and Zambia is the second largest producer of emeralds in the world after Colombia. And he says 400 kg costs $2.5 billion. Is anyone even paying attention to the emeralds we are putting out of Lufwanyama? And when you go to Lufwanyama, you wouldn't think that the wealthiest resource in this world is being mined from Lufwanyama. You don't see any evidence, not even a good road, not even infrastructure to show that this wealth is, this kind of wealth is coming from that area. Our gold, our copper, there's a projection because of the electric motor vehicle industry that has emerged. All vehicles, in the next 10 years will be electrical. Copper is being projected to rise. It will be selling minimum $10,000 for a long time, up to 10 to 20 years. What are we doing with this resource? Why are we keen to give it away already? This government is very lucky that it found two largest mines in the hands of government, Mopani and KCM. What are their plans? Listening to Mr. Msokotwane, Dr. Msokotwane, it appears that he's quick to give it to the investors, despite all these projections that have emerged on copper and cobalt.
Because he's saying recapitalization is huge,
Yeah.
it's unaffordable.
Remember when there was a tour of President Lungu to China, and they visited a company that processes copper and cobalt, and they're supplying mines. And they said, this year alone, we've bought from Zambia copper and cobalt worth $1.5 billion. Yet our records here, we're showing small money, something like 100 million. This CEO disclosed information. So where is the gap between 100 million that our records are showing and the $1.5 billion that company was buying? So these are the issues we need to attend to: the leakages, the transfer pricing, the way they cook the books to ensure that they don't pay taxes or equitable taxes or real taxes. They refuse to refine in the country. You've seen the trucks carrying sacks, literally sacks of ore. They refuse to process here, because if they process it in Zambia, it will disclose the amount of gold that is there. It will disclose the kind of copper you have in there. If they send it as residue, Malova, they'll just pay an export price of, is it 10%, to Amalova. There are these tricks that are occurring in the mining sector that we need to plug. But you have a government proposing solutions that that they're not learning from history, where they quickly want to give away even these mines, despite the projections that this is going to be a lucrative sector. And copper is not available all over the world. It's just available in Zambia, DRC, Chile, USA, and some in China and Russia. It's a valuable commodity. Why do you want to give it away? That would be my question. In fact, I expect them to begin to say, for the mines that are in Northwestern Province, probably we're now adding maybe up to 40%. That's what we should expect, not giving them away. So those are our concerns, Zach.
Ambassador Manawamba, thank you very much for coming and obviously for sharing a lot with our listeners. And we can only wish you all the best. Obviously, we'll talk.
Traveling to the Copper Belt, the road is extremely bad. It's bumpy, it's treacherous, all the way from Lusaka up to Ndola. Then you have bad states of roads. As we go to our villages, for example, the Serenje, Mpika, Kasama, terrible roads. For those going up to Nakonde, Mpika, Chinsali, Isoka, Nakonde, terrible road, treacherous roads. We have a duty to take care of our families and ensure that we come alive in 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you.